Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on another terrific Tuesday edition of Talk Today. Even though it's raining and wet outside, that means there are blessings from on high. We have the opportunity to speak to independent journalist Ms. Kayla Young, a phenomenal professional who will share with us a recent research piece. Good to get into the meat of the matter, so we invite you to stay tuned and be a part of our discussion.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, welcome back, and thank you for joining us. It's always an opportunity to learn as we listen, and sometimes come away with not only being more informed, but seriously positioned and poised to do great things because you have an opportunity to engage. Very grateful to be able to reach out and access the wonderful resources that we have. And honored now that Miss Kayla Young would be, our guest. Hey, good afternoon, and welcome on Arena Tuesday to you, Miss Kayla.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Well, it's an honor. It truly is. And I think when we look at this time in human history, and in particular, when we have the opportunities to not just build bridges and extend friendships, but to lay what perhaps is a foundation for future generations to understand the importance of taking up the mantle, for being inquiring, to be that, that person that is so poised to stand in the gap, to ensure that it's not just about doing things right, it's about doing things with others to let them feel a sense of courage and empowerment. And I think through research and sharing that information, whether it's about a new recipe or it's about a new product to be launched, or even your favorite restaurant that has revised its menu, sometimes we don't share the things that can give not just greater enjoyment to people's lives, but give them a level of, education, as it were, that is instructive.
Thank you for that. And I it's always a pleasure to be on your program. And I wanted to chat today about a series that's just come out. I've gotten a lot of discussion online, but I wanted to bring it to your radio audience as well. So I appreciate that.
No, but thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry. I'm so excited.
I was just going to explain a bit about the series. I don't want to get ahead of myself.
No, please.
So the series that came out last week is the Cayman part is called Cayman Gone. You can find it on Loop Cayman, or you can find it on the CPI website, which is a nonprofit news organization based in Puerto Rico. Their main page is in Spanish, so I think most of our readers will have an easier time navigating the Loop Cayman website to find it, but there is that English language version on CPI's website. And this was a regional collaboration with them. They open opportunities periodically to journalists in the Caribbean to really polish their investigative skills. And so I would encourage anyone who is interested in investigative journalism to, look into the organization and maybe connect with opportunities with them in the future, because this was really a phenomenal experience for me to learn from other journalists in the region and learn from each other. But the focus of this investigation was on Cayman's development, a really a big, encompassing topic, and something that I know is on the minds of many people on islands as we see Cayman develop and change and question where Cayman is going.
Mm-hmm.
And so for this series, we looked at the intersection between climate, development, and also the social consequences of that, which I think sometimes it can be difficult to bring these conversations together. But, as I listened to people on island, and, often as a journalist, that's part of the groundwork is just listening. You pick up on the theme of kind of, a frustration on island, a sense that Cayman is changing in ways that not everyone is comfortable with, that people at times feel they don't recognize the place that they were born in. And what does that mean, for Cayman and where we're going?
Right.
We've seen housing prices really increase and fall out of reach for a lot of Caymanians, and that has serious long-term consequences if we see young people and Caymanians priced out of the market here.
Yeah, I mean, as I listen to you, it's obviously very evident for the Caymanian, but even those of us who have maybe been here for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, and in some instances even longer, who themselves will say off the bat, okay, they weren't born here, but this is their home. They've seen the changes, and not all of it has been positive nor productive. So the economic implications, but there are also some, as you shared, societal concerns as well in terms of the growing divide. And is it also the imposition of maybe values and practices that people bring with them?
Yeah, and I think that's a challenge in a society as diverse as Cayman's, right? That we have people from all over the world, a real mix of values and visions. But of course, for the people that were born here or the people that chose to make Cayman their home through, immigration and settling here,
right.
There's this real need to protect and preserve what makes this place great, right? And a lot of what makes Cayman a great place is our natural spaces, our beaches, the sense of peace that you get being on an island, in an island community where you know people, and when that starts to slip out of hand, when you see less and less places that those natural spaces diminish, and that sense of recognition, that sense of being at home fade away, that's when tensions start to come out. That's when we start to see the community become divided, the community become a less friendly, less welcoming place. That it's a consequence of the real things that people are living, and when we hear that frustration, we have to pay attention to it and really evaluate, okay, where is this stemming from, and what do we do about it?
Yeah. And as I listen to you, the idea that I think right in there, central to that whole thing, is the idea of safety, personal security. And when I say to people that we can talk about accounting and finance, but I think the one subject that we don't appreciate sufficiently is economics. It's not just about the money, it's the societal implications.
Well, and that's something this investigation got into, and it's quite a long piece, but I'd really encourage people to spend some time reading it. And this is something that Roy Bodden touched on in the article, is that when he was a kid here, there weren't these private property signs everywhere. Cayman was a more open place. Kids could run and play, and they're not worried about whose yard it is or getting run off. And now we're living in a Cayman with more gated communities, more walls being put up, more private property signs. There's less of that integrated feeling of community. There's more of the sense that there are places that
exclude,
and more exclusion. And something that he brings up is that, we're risking a situation where the walls that we put up for privacy might become necessary for security as we marginalize more and more members of Cayman.
And I think this is where I know for some people they may be offended by it, but I see it as a matter of principle. It's one thing to say that you have something that's exclusive, and in the same breath to say that this is exclusive, right? Because if you're excluding people, take gated communities for instance. Now, what is the adage that we've always heard? Fences make good neighbors, hide the fence, the better the neighbor. We laugh and joke about that, but what is the idea of a community? And if you build a new subdivision, new development, and you gate it is one thing, but then to take an existing one and superimpose that because of the ownership within that community now has changed, are you excluding people? As I've said publicly, and I make no apology for it, I certainly not intend to be offensive, but I think I'm correct. When I've had the personal experience, as I've had from teachers and coaches, to take their children to certain areas and be able to point out, that was my former student, look at where she lives today. That was Mr. So-and-so who was such and such, and look at where he lives. You too one day, something to motivate them, right? In universities, we've always probably volunteered. I did a project like you and probably many, talking about the inner city. Again, labels are unfortunate, but that's what we ascribe. And this particular community that they called a project was literally divided by a high wall, and the university is right there. But the amount of people who from that community went to that university were probably less than 0.00000 1%. Not just physical attended, but actually physically went into the university.
Yeah. Well, and the trends that we see elsewhere, Cayman is not immune from them. We are certainly capable of getting to a point that's even more divided, even more tense than where we are now. We can't pretend that these trends, if they play out as they're going now, wouldn't have more serious consequences for our islands. And I think something to contemplate is, during this pandemic period especially, we see that construction has been a very significant part of the economic plan. Across administrations. The last government and the new government are leaning heavily on infrastructure projects to continue driving the economy. And Cayman has faced those difficult decisions during the pandemic of, okay, how do we generate jobs? How do we keep people employed? But we also have to ask ourselves this question of, okay, but what kind of infrastructure are we building, and who are we building it for? Because it doesn't make sense to me to hear that Cayman is having a housing crisis, that people can't find affordable places to live, and at the same time we see the entire island under construction building new housing. Well, who gets to live in that housing? If no one can afford it, who are we building this housing for? It's not fair to ask Caymanians to sacrifice their beaches, to sacrifice their mangroves and their natural spaces to build empty condominiums for people who don't live here.
And is that creating a social fabric that says, a phrase I've been hearing a lot recently, the uber elite, the uber wealthy, where we've created a class structure, either inadvertently or deliberately. When we come back from the break, let's continue that discussion, Ms. Kayla, and ask. I mean, we've heard of, well, you know what, when we come back from the break, let's delve into it. For those who are listening, Susan works her magical touch with the technology. So even though Ms. Kayla is online, we still got a 500 phone lines available to you. One of them must work. Try a shout if you want to share a thought, but we're certainly going to live as we learn through Ms. Kayla about, is Cayman gone? Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Freedom, Cayman Brack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray, and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
This is how we wake you up in the morning. Praise time on Radio Cayman. Praise time.
Jesus in the morning. I will. So send me, Lord, I will go. Born again. Thank God I'm born again.
Weekday mornings from 6 until 6:30.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And join us as our guest via the phone is Ms. Kayla Young, independent journalist. And Ms. Kayla, as we get into a discussion, we do have a caller, accessing the technology that we seem to have leveraged and join us on the phone. So let's see if we can make a conference call of sorts. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Okay, hello. Good afternoon. All right, well, we'll try that. Hey, good afternoon. All right. Welcome. All right. Hello, caller.
Hi, Dwayne.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Good afternoon to you and your guest. I don't know. I didn't catch her name.
It's Kayla Young. One of the.
I want to know, is she an attorney or something?
She's a journalist, an investigative independent journalist.
I would like to see her, get to meet her after, if I can have her number. I want to speak to her regarding these homes. I agree with her 100%. They're building these homes, they're not affordable. I was a homeowner, and I had to sell my house in 2019. I was forced by government, all the bills I owed that popped up to my house, and I was forced to sell my house to pay those bills.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It is ridiculous, but I would love to get your number so that I could talk with you after the show.
Yeah, that's fine with me if you want to pass that along.
Okay, if you pass, and if you wish, Mom, just leave your number with Miss Susan and I'll pass it to Miss Kayla for you. That might be an easier way to do it, okay?
Yeah,
all right. Hey, thanks very much, Mom. And respectfully, Miss Kayla, that is kind of the plight that many people have found, even not just in this jurisdiction, but in generally speaking, we've heard people with that similar sort of situation some have even alleged that there's collusion amongst different, what of a better word, professionals that sort of bring that unfortunate circumstance about, unwillingness of banks to refinance, the pressures brought by realtors, different things that happen, right?
Yeah, and that's something that I didn't have the chance to get into even in this investigation, and that is a problem that we're hearing from a lot of people, is this pressure to sell. And it's not just here in Cayman. I hear it from people in the States and elsewhere, that I think really the real estate market is booming in a lot of places right now, and we're finding a lot of regular people being pressured and priced out. And homeowners getting unsolicited calls from property companies pressuring them to sell. And a lot of those developers, those property companies, you might not know what their end goal is with your property, right? Or even who you're selling to. I mean, a lot of the sales in Cayman are to holding companies. And that creates a sort of mystery around who is buying up Cayman, who owns, sometimes you're not really sure. And that, I think, prevents regular Caymanians from being able to fully assess what's happening here when there's this mystery and this protection of who's buying the island.
Right. I mean, we've seen that in, say, Florida. There were a couple of developments mimicking Seaside, where there were concerns in the recent years that they are now sort of empty communities, wonderful master plan communities, but the concern is that there's no life, no soul, because there's no occupancy. Yeah, and
that's something, one of the properties that is highlighted in the Cayman Gone investigation is the watercolors, and the realtor there commented that only about a third of the owners actually live there. And that's pretty apparent when you walk through the property, that there's not a lot of life there. And you contrast that to the stories that people tell you about when that site was the beach club colony, and how it was a fun place to hang out, to get drinks with friends, live music. And you see that, especially 7 Mile is being turned more and more into the playground of the elite, and this exclusive place where, the beach bars that common people can go to are fewer and fewer, and the private property signs are more and more. And we know that many places have followed this trend where the beaches have eventually been completely blocked off from the locals. And we don't want Cayman to get to that extreme. And I think it's reasonable for people to make a fuss now before we see this out to the extreme. Yeah.
Well, those are things that we probably are being encouraged to consider. As you said before, it becomes, that thing that is totally untenable. But we do have a caller to join us. Let's take the next caller. Welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, sir.
A very important, I think, necessary subject that you got moving on it. Who's the young lady that's doing this, Kayla?
Okay, so Kayla Young?
Kayla Young.
Oh. Kayla Young. Do I know you?
I don't know. Who are you?
I guess that's a real stupid question. But anyway, I knew a young lady by the name of Kayla, and I think her mother's last name was Young. I think
not the same.
From probably 10 years ago.
There's another Kayla on island I get confused with, and I always try my best to write good articles so I don't accidentally embarrass her.
Okay. Well, maybe that's where the confusion came in. Anyway, you're a journalist, you say?
Yes. And so this story was on Loop Cayman and on CPI in Puerto Rico's website. They're a nonprofit.
Okay, well, have you done anything about making the National Archives aware of this?
Yes, and we did reach out to the National Archives for this to show some of those images of old Cayman, to provide that contrast visually of how much Cayman has changed over the years. And there's a segment we get into the concept of Cayman kind, and what does that mean to us today when we see also these frustrations, just below the surface in Cayman, and how it affects people's outlook and perception of their home.
Well, I think if you have the whereabouts, maybe you ought to follow up and maybe try to. I'm not sure how long the article is, but maybe get an information sheet on it, or the whole article printed on a. And I don't have to be anything expensive, just a sheet that could be distributed, within the community by the various NGOs within the community, because I think things like this will go a great distance in really sensitizing the Caymanian community, about Cayman, which not many of them know anything about Cayman.
Yeah,
that's a sad part, and some of them don't want to know. That's another sad part.
Yeah. And it is sad. I mean, Cayman has a fascinating history, a fascinating heritage, and that's something I tried to capture in this investigation, is not just what's happening now, but how we got here, what the context is in terms of the progression of development over generations until now, and how did we get to this point? I think it's important for people to understand their history to put that into perspective.
Well, that's very, very important to any society or community that's wants to try to move forward in a more or less strategic direction. Because the past is behind us, but very often the past shines a bright light to where we should go in the future.
Yes, and to remember, what were those values that we might have lost touch with?
Well, there's a lot of them that we've lost. I mean, you made reference to the, I guess you could call it the beach restrictions. That's now in place, and it's really something to think that if a Caymanian want to go to Long Point to throw out his line to maybe see if the snappers was coming in tonight, and can't go there basically without thinking that you might be infringing on somebody's private property.
Yeah, right. There's more of those questions now of, am I allowed to be here? Can I just sit on this beach and enjoy the view? Or is someone going to walk out of their house and ask me what I'm doing here?
While we're on beaches, there's another aspect to that. The actions by some of these same people who come in here over the last, let's say, what's this, 2022, over the last 50 years, have caused a lot of the beach to want to disappear or to have disappeared.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's an important part of the discussion is the legacy of a lot of the coastal developments are, we're seeing the effects of that with the erosion points along 7 Mile Beach, the seawalls that are exacerbating that erosion, especially in front of Marriott, Boggy Sand Road. Those are consequences of these long-time planning trends that have ignored best advice in terms of creating those setbacks. And if those setbacks had been respected and enforced, 7 Mile would be an even more beautiful place. It would be a much better beach experience. We would have more beach there to enjoy.
That's right. I mean, it's critical that all these things, and you know, I think there's a project, I believe, that's sitting somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where it's at now. A beach restoration. Well, you know, I think that's like the old folks used to say, spitting into the wind. If the thoughts are that you're going to bring sand in and it's going to stay there, with what is along the beach now. So it's But
I have a lot of questions about that beach renourishment project. I don't see that any kind of beach renourishment project will be successful unless we address those hard structures along 7 Mile Beach that are exacerbating the problem.
Yeah. But you've referenced, Bogosan, Marriott. I mean, there's also the old West India Club called Caymanian. But even the new development just further north, the Watermark or something.
The Watermark.
We saw the issue relative to the turtles when they were initially, I think if memory serves correct, clearing property. But even now with the hard structure there. So we may have historical record to indicate that these things may or may not have contributed to the extent that they have. But even very recent and now ongoing projects that could potentially be doing the same thing or even worse. Yet we're not cognizant.
We're not learning.
There's a very recent, what should I say, situation with that down there on Henning Beach.
Mm-hmm.
A project that went up there 3 years ago. Before that project went up there, on any turtle nesting season, there were a dozen to maybe 15, 16, 20 turtle nests in that stretch of beach.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, in the last 2 years since that project was completed, I don't think there's been any.
Yeah. Well, when we look at the bigger picture, we see fewer and fewer turtle nesting beaches. I mean, I think about the Mandarin Oriental project, which hasn't started yet, and the concerns that were raised about turtle nesting there. The Watermark project, they were issued early on a cease and desist order about constructing on the beach during turtle nesting season. And I guess something I find concerning is that even when these cease and desist orders are issued by the Department of Environment, we're not seeing consequences. We might see construction temporarily pause, but we're not seeing fines. We're not seeing any kind of serious deterrent that would tell developers to not do these things.
Yeah, well, there's a recent scenario right in the West Bay area up on what was known as Bob's Back there, which there's been access to that for the last 200 years, and you go up there now, it's blocked off, and how many turtles are going to come ashore and land and try to make a nest on alien sand on the beach?
Yep. It's all related, and this isn't a turtle nesting beach, but I think about the Fenn condominiums that were built directly on the Iron Shore there in South Sound, and with the weather we had this weekend, there was water lapping into the property, and it really raises a lot of questions about how in these times when we have warnings about sea level rise and plenty of environmental reports discourage building directly on the coast, that something like that would still go forward and still be built. I mean, it couldn't be any closer to the sea unless it had been built in the sea.
Yeah, well, it's, But anyway, I think that paper that you're talking about, it would be, I think, a benefit to the community if they got a hold of that.
Well, if you want to leave your contact, I'll send you a link so that you can read it.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, sir. And Ms. Kayla, we're going to just pause quickly for a short break, and then we'll continue right after. So, to our listeners, join us right after.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Doctors Hospital would like to advise the community that they are now authorized to provide confirmatory PCR testing for positive lateral flow tests at no charge to patients, including residents and visitors. You can view the full schedule of testing and locations or book your appointment at doctorshospitalcayman.com or call 325-9000 extension 2.
You see how hard it's raining?
Yeah, and I don't have time to fight traffic and get my lunch from Subway. I have so much work to do.
Why don't you order Subway by using the Let's Eat or Bento app? Save time, stay dry, and get your sandwich fast.
I never thought of that. Great idea. I'm going to order now.
Order me a veggie pizza while you're at it.
And a cookie platter for the office.
Too busy at work or home? Is the rainy weather stopping you from dining out? Order your favorite Subway sandwich, wrap, or pizza through the Let's Eat or Bento app with fast and reliable delivery. Subway, eat fresh.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Let Cora keep my ground so clean.
The heart and soul of the Cayman people. Thank you for keeping the culture alive.
Let's read the news every day. From East End to Georgetown, down into West Bay.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
On a daily basis, making it easy to connect with you, our listeners. Add us to WhatsApp today, 925-3261. That's 925-3261.
Radio Cayman.
Send a text or voice note.
Can I send a request, please?
You don't really have to ask us. Just send a request.
This is a shout out to my ex.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
Good afternoon, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. And our guest today is independent journalist Miss Kayla Young. And thank you for taking time to share and for the callers thus far. But Miss Kayla, I was just listening and recognizing the importance. We talk about the media being the fourth estate. And for some, we're probably accustomed to journalism being a particular thing and the investigative side of journalism that not only serves as an expose, but maybe serve to educate people, to bring to the public's attention certain things. Maybe as we look at this series, maybe we can ask about that, because some of us would see it and look at it as pointing fingers, others would be looking at it as illuminating, and yet we don't see how instructive it is. What is? Well, we can answer that now, or we can take this next caller, whichever you prefer. Maybe take the caller, give you a chance to...
Yeah, let's take the caller.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, good afternoon, welcome, thanks for calling.
Evening, Dwayne.
Hey.
Evening, Miss Kayla Young.
Hello.
Very interesting, very interesting. I was driving, I had to stop and give you a call.
Thanks.
You know, you talk about the changing faces of Cayman, right? I remember as a teenager, I used to ride horses on the 7 Mile Beach, you know. That's when the beach was belonged to Caymanians.
Yeah.
You know? And his two things came and changed Cayman. The people with money and the in-minded people that followed him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we right now we on the edge of building one of the most beautiful ghettos in the Caribbean because we're surrounded by beautiful, pristine blue waters and the most beautiful houses in the Caribbean, in the world. Yeah. And inside, there's a sword that's festering, nastiness, evilness. And you know, our politicians really not having too much to say about it, but I can tell you something now. Right now I'm taking this time to congratulate Mr. Kenneth Bryan from Georgetown, that young man, for taking the stance that he is taking about our island being disrespected, militarily disrespected by expatriates with their dirty behavior. Now listen to me, Mom, and Mr. Dwayne.
Yes, sir.
We know Caymanians talk about the thing of the car or the bicycle and thing when we did not know garbage pan and thing around there. But we have never had a problem with this derelict vehicles. That is a Jamaican trend that they brought here with them. And it is good. And we have to do something about it. Our island, everywhere you go, what is wrong that we can't get this thing enforced? But I tell you one thing, I take off my hat to Kenneth Bryan, and I hope all of the government and all of the MLAs, well, I tell you one thing, we got two from up here, that it's like they don't give a red rose's ass about it. I'm telling you the truth. That's what I'm against them. I mean, I talk to them. We got a woman is in charge up here. And I say, woman, go and do your job. Put the ticket on the car. Do this. If they don't comply, write a letter to Cayman. Bring it to me. I ain't not afraid to go on the radio. But you know what? Hello. The enforcer is an expert. So, at the end of the day, if the vehicle is there, she get paid. If they're gone, she still get paid. And you know something, ma'am? Listen to me. You see, what the people don't understand, what is happening to Cayman now, is the rich people, they come in and they live in their area. They hire people. Once those people go home, you know which area they come and live in? They come and live in the community of the middle class and the poor Caymanian. It disrupts our way of life.
Yeah.
We, the people, the poor people, the middle class, the richer people, our life is getting disrupted. Listen, 30 years ago we introduced the marine park. Beautiful, wonder bar. Now, I've been begging for 20 years. Stop. The people that work from fishing, the tourists from fishing getting caught, whatever. They're not doing that. You know what they do? They cut down the limits. They expand the marine park. So, who is it hurting? The law-abiding Caymanian. You can get off a plane when the lobster season open and go get your lobster. You count your bills. But the law-abiding wait 6 months to get it. Why can't we get people that stand up for just simple things, just to Caymanian rights?
Yeah.
I mean, hey, what is this? What do we need to wake us up? Because obviously, we're not being educated. They ain't teaching no civics at the school. There's nothing about. The only time anything go to the school is something to keep a Caymanian down. You know? When they wanted the group closed down, every school kid in the Cayman Islands had to save the grouper. What they don't tell the school children, that if you want to fishing, you got to stop your helper or this one for fishing. Why they not telling the people, the young children that? Listen, Mom, I can talk all day about the subject, but you know, you're doing a really good job, and I want to say again, Kenneth Bryan, I am supporting you 110% every day, anytime, my brother. If you want help, come on back with it. You know my number. Give me a call, and I'll be, thank you very much. You're doing a splendid job, Mom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Hey, thanks very much, Sean.
And the caller touched on a couple of points there. One about Cayman is constructing one of the most beautiful ghettos, he says, in the Caribbean, and that might sound extreme to some people, but the reality is that we are seeing Cayman stratified, and I think a lot of the very wealthy who move here and enjoy a high quality of life here might be unaware of how serious and deep the poverty is for a lot of people living in Cayman.
Ms. Kayla,
yeah.
Apologies, and this is where sometimes I try to respect the breaks, but also try to appreciate the how do you interrupt the conversation. But let's just take this news break and maybe talk about that potential stratification, that class system that inadvertently or deliberately even we may be sort of bringing into our society. So after the break, we'll continue this discussion. Please stay tuned.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. Minister Kenneth Bryan will host a networking reception to provide an opportunity for cruise tourism partners to meet and greet senior FCCA executives. They will discuss the way forward with respect to safely restarting the cruise tourism industry. The event takes place 7 p.m. this evening at the Kimpton Seafire Resort. In international news, the U.S. is expected to approve coronavirus vaccines for children under the age of 5 by the end of February. Officials at the Food and Drug Administration anticipate Pfizer will ask them in coming days to authorize 2 doses for the age group. An almost 500-mile-long bolt of lightning that lit up the sky across 3 U.S. states has set a new world record for longest flash, scientists have confirmed. The lightning bolt extended a total of 477.2 miles and spread across Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. The previous record was 440.6 miles and recorded in Brazil in 2018. Lightning rarely extends over 10 miles and usually lasts under a second. Athletes and visitors heading to the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing should leave their phones at home and use temporary ones instead, the FBI has urged. It comes in a wider warning about how cyber activities may disrupt the events. Those include ransomware and denial of service attacks, but it also cautioned about malware, data theft, and the installation of tracking tools on mobile devices. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Urban Adolphus Tibbetts Certificate of Honor, 1914 to 1991. Urban Tibbetts was the 12th and last child of William and Henrietta Tibbetts of Cayman Brac. As a young man, he went to sea for a few years. When he returned home, he served as a police officer for 3 years and then returned to sea. After retiring from sea for the second time, he joined the Public Works Department and within a few years became supervisor. During his years as work supervisor, He supervised the construction of Kemmenbrack Airport, the road to the lighthouse on the bluff, and the road on the south side of the Brack. He did not just supervise the work, but worked along with the men on the job. Urban raised cattle, and when he butchered at Christmas time, he often gave away beef to families who could not pay for it. He was always willing to help those in need. In the early 1950s, he donated the land for Fellowship Baptist Church, and once it was built, he joined the church and became a deacon. Urban was married to Vida McLaughlin, and the couple had 7 children.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your Sister Islands.
Discover all that our Sister Islands have to offer.
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips. For all occasions and celebrations, let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, welcome back, and thanks for joining us on our guest today via the telephone is Ms. Kayla Young, independent journalist, and thank you for taking some time, and we'll ensure that we use it, as constructively and productively as we should with all, over minutes and seconds. But you are highlighting some very, very salient points, and I think many of us, they strike a chord. But as we continue, I was asking earlier about this idea of journalism, the media being a fourth estate. The notion that, especially in small communities, there may be an unwillingness, or some would say a cowardice, or some would say even an inability to shine the light on some things,
No, I mean, you make a lot of good points there, and I mean, if we're very honest, the state of journalism in Cayman right now is not good. We've seen a lot of we saw Cayman 27 close. We've seen the Cayman Compass news staff, cut in half. I mean, that has a real effect. We have some small publications that are trying to cover their focus areas, and there's certainly journalists on island that do good work that I respect, but we don't have a robust or an independent enough media here to really deeply cover the issues that matter and to do these kinds of in-depth investigations without fear of repercussion. And I think the smallness of Cayman does have an impact on that. I mean, it's very easy to run into conflicts of interest and to run into pressure or to fear real consequences in your social or professional life when you're never that far removed from the issue, and it's hard to be an investigative journalist in Cayman. I mean, there is pressure, there is pushback, there is fear of losing your job or burning bridges for trying to speak up in an honest and impactful way. I'd love to encourage more young Caymanians to pursue journalism as a patriotic cause, to to really try to build up a more robust media corps here. But I also understand that that's not an easy path.
Mm-hmm.
And there aren't a lot of options here as a journalist. And, this is something I could speak on all day, but, Cayman's media, it needs a lot more to really do the job that this community deserves.
Yeah. Well, it's something that perhaps as we encourage people, it may resonate with someone. Let's take this other call and maybe the one following. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Hello.
Hey, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Dwayne, and good afternoon to your special guest, Miss Kayla Young.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Yes, please. I read your article, Mom, and it has made the social media and all kinds of groups, and I think it has had quite an impact. I enjoyed it. Well, enjoyed it in the sense that it covered the issues that matter in Cayman, and it covered them in a very unique way. It was very thorough on the statistics, but it didn't have too much. It was very thorough on the reasoning, and I really, I read it, I learned from it, I had some things affirmed, we discussed this with people. And the thing that I've always wondered about Cayman, governments come and go. And what I have found is that there are no real changes from one government to the next. I have been privileged in the last few years, maybe 5 or 6 years, to be involved with people in the Cayman Islands who have been fighting for beach access, for example, for 30 years. Okay, way back there were approximately 500 affidavits which were put together to prove certain rights of way. And they were supposed to prove about 200 rights of way throughout the 3 islands. And up to this day, no government has come up to say, okay, let's register those rights of way, or let us amend the law to make it possible for those rights of way to be registered. And even as a person who came to live in the Cayman Islands in 2003, and my kids went to school partly there, when they went off to college one time, like the first time they went off to college, and when they came back, they found suddenly 7 Mile Beach was no longer the way it was. And they said, Daddy, but what happened here? I said, well, something happened, it's now no longer as free as it used to be. And right now there's other attempts again to take away camping sites and so on. And personally, I feel that the governments have been disingenuous. They keep paying lip service to this, but when they come into government, they are not doing anything. I don't know if the past government is going to do something about this, but I hope they do. But let me just end on giving it a bit of perspective. The land issue is part of a broader issue of Caymanians losing their turf. Because I was privileged to present a paper at the Borden Symposium not too long ago. And I learned a lot even as I myself was presenting. There was a lady there called Latoya Francis who works for, I think, the Monetary Authority. She presented a paper as part of her master's where she showed that in the schools, those schools that are best performing, the people who go there are not Caymanians. Like, for example, the poorest performing pre-kindergarten schools, the poorest performing, about 80 to 90% of the students there are Caymanians. The ones that are performing the best, only about 10% are Caymanian. And unless Cayman can actually look at all these issues, the land issue, the society issue, the education issue, you won't have a Cayman, which even I found when I came to live in Cayman in 2003. And I think it's good that you are highlighting the issue relating to land, but people also need to understand that this is just one facet of a larger problem which governments have been ignoring. I could go on and on about this. There are other countries where this has resulted in political problems in future. And it seems in Cayman nobody is listening, but it's good that you are sending out this message and keeping the discussion going. People need to be sensitized to this so that a solution can be found.
All right. Well, thank you for
very much. I appreciate very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. And let's hear what others have to share, Ms. Kayla. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. On our guest today is Ms. Kayla Young, independent journalist. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. Kayla, how are you doing?
Afternoon, my friend. How are you today?
Not bad, not bad. Oh, I don't really like to call the talk shows anymore, right? But I told you this before, Dwayne. But I'll say this, right? When you sit down and you look at things, I'm going to ask you a question and Ms. Kayla a question. Who runs the charities on this island?
Well, that's a whole other topic, right?
Right? I mean, I'll answer it. Caymanians don't do it. Caymanian government do it. A minuscule amount of it. We depend on foreigners to do so, right? And the majority of charities on this island are run by foreigners. Right? Now, Caymanians run this country. Okay, there's never been an expat here that has ever ran or made any laws within this country. Right? So if we cannot take care of our own people from a charity standpoint, when they're in need, what makes anyone think, right, that it'll go any different from where it is right now? Okay?
Yeah.
So in saying that, right, we sit here and we have, and I sit down and watch the marches. We march for, and I don't have anything against them, but I'll say it anyway. We march for gay rights. Okay? We march jobs for Caymanians, barely the Caymanians show up for that. Right? We have all these marches and stuff that, to me, right, we Caymanians and we people that really want something, we should be marching for houses for Caymanians, land for Caymanians. How do you do that? We have people come here spending $27 million for a place, $8 million for a place. Shouldn't we put a tax on that and put aside something? Because if you can spend $29 million and $8 million on a condominium, you can pay a tax on that, which goes towards helping a Cayman with a piece of land or a house. Right? Okay. Cayman lawmakers and politicians have always missed the boat. All right? We've missed the boat on the financial sector. We got nothing from it. All the money leaves the country. Right? We are missing the boat on development, although we strive on development. Right? Totally missing the boat on it and not leaving anything behind. For us, same thing we did with the financial sector, same exact thing that we're doing with the development now. So yes, we're developing. Right? And Caymanians are the ones that own the property here. And Caymanians are the ones that sold all the property here. Right? Foreigners wouldn't own any property here unless they came here and buy it. Right?
And
am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you bring up a good point about property taxation, especially when it comes to these multi-million-dollar properties sold to foreigners, and often foreigners who don't even live here.
Well, we should be collecting tax from these people to put aside for housing for Caymanians. There's tons of those places selling here every day. The cost again out of reach for Cayman. Then you ask yourself why? Why are the prices so high within the places today? Right?
Yeah.
Because the places that are building are not building for Caymanians.
No.
Simple as that.
No, I mean, I see a market that's building for people who don't live here. So, of course, it's priced out of range for the people who live here when the market is being created to attract the wealthiest people in the world. And
but we sit here as lawmakers and we allow that. Right? We sit here as Caymanians and we allow that. And then we sit and we say, oh, well, how come Caymanians can't own a property? But what has successful governments done to make sure, besides you dropping the stamp duties? Right? Have we ensured that a Caymanian can go out and get a loan or being able to get a house? And not only that, being able to sustain owning a house?
Yeah.
Right?
And
these are things that we have never prepared on our people for. Okay? So I'll just leave you by saying this, right? There's been no foreigner to make any laws in this country. Caymanians run this country. Caymanians own all the land in this country, right? Besides the ones that have already sold out. Okay? So we are paving the way, as I see it, exactly what Caymanians want. Because it hasn't changed, right? And obviously if you have Cayman lawmakers and Caymanians that own these things and do these things, this is what Caymanians want, in my view. Because if this is not what they want, we'd have changed it a long time ago. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, man. And before we take the call, Ms. Kayla, any thoughts before we take the other call?
Well, I think he brings up an interesting point about, who runs things here. Of course, government is democratically elected by Caymanian voters. But, something I bring up in the Cayman Gone investigation is that is the 2015 Auditor General report that points out that Cayman's development plan has not been updated since the 90s. And that more and more we're seeing the development plan not taken into consideration when it comes to planning and construction decisions. So we created this situation where, as stated in the Auditor General report, that these choices have effectively been punted to the private sector. And that is taking away democratic power from the community. The failure to update the development framework is making it so that more and more the private sector is guiding Cayman's development rather than the democratically elected officials who have made promises to their constituents.
But is that, well, maybe we can get into that in terms of the electoral process, but let's take these callers, because it's always good to be in. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling. Hey, good afternoon.
Yeah, happy to talk today. Happy to be journalist. I'm not very great. The positive, the former who was up. The Rooster, right? Yeah. They remember my mother, darling. I would say, yes, right? Make journalists listen and learn in life. Propaganda, sort war, right? And now the point I make now, in the US, no, North Hemisphere, right? Fox News is Republicans. That's the news, right? And Democrats in Hollywood squares, right? Bisexual. Obama gonna take it. Let's be number one. Jared Dorian. Santa. The point I make now. Cayman society now in life. I called a couple days ago, right? I told it the pandemic is a bronchitis pandemic. You know? Inflation price, everything rocket, highway robbery, let's be the monster. You understand? But in life now, journalism is a dedicated job. Right? Right? Don't kill a messenger. Phone up. You saw him, so number one, yeah.
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 Man.
What you make different. I get arrogant now. I'm not asking. Clean the house up.
Right.
Journalism is important. The message, right? You see the father and the son, recipe for the cash flow, communist, right? And Vladimir Putin, he time up now. He time is up. Like I told you yesterday, Jordan, KGB, EIA, MI5, MI6, UK, who's one? Yeah, you are happy yet? Or half a tangent, I don't know. No, you started, you know, or later.
Yeah.
In race, man. Half one little red. But then, respect ya.
Yeah, man.
I'll talk to you better.
All right.
So, play it out.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, man. And as a caller shares, the idea of good independent journalism is crucial to democracy. Ms. Kelly, let's take this other call. Hey, welcome. Good afternoon. Thanks for calling.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hey, my friend. Afternoon, man. How you doing?
Not too bad. Good afternoon, Ms. Kayla.
Good afternoon.
If I think I remember correctly, I could be wrong. I think were you the young lady that was doing the interviews in the 2017 election with all the candidates for Compass?
I did. I used to work at Compass for 4 years until end of 2020.
Okay, no, I was just asking because you sounded familiar and the name sounds familiar. That's all.
Yep, you got the right person.
Yeah, well, I certainly just want to weigh in on the caller before the last, because I happen to know who the person is, and I just want to make a few observations only because it's critically important when we're having a open panel discussion like this. And thank you, Radio Cayman, and thank you, Kayla, for providing this. When we hear people make remarks such as, well, somebody can buy a $29 million or $8 million condo, why are we not taxing that to buy land for Caymanians? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to understand the society, the environment, the economy, and the place in which we live, called the Cayman Islands. And that our GDP, if you took the time out to go and look and see how we generate GDP, it comes from stamp duties. From a large part of it comes from stamp duties and different other things that government charges as services in order to generate that GDP, right? We also have to bear in mind that we have to pay police, fire service, customs, immigration, and all of the other borderline people. We also have free education for public schools for Caymanian children. So these things, we got NRA, we got public works, we got all these things that come at a cost, because a lot of those things are not revenue-generating entities in which are essentials to the survival of the Cayman Islands. Now, stamp duty is charged on all property that is sold, with special circumstances like first-time Caymanian owners out of love and compassion, and they're adjusting that as we see now. But what I want to point out, where the caller stated, well, we should be taxing those people because they can afford to buy these, not realizing that we already tax them with stamp duty. That money goes into central government revenues, which makes up the GDP annually. And we must understand, Sterling, is that for the last 50 years, we have been geared towards accommodating inward-bound investment to our island simply because we don't have any natural resources in terms of export. So we must figure out how to generate revenue other ways. Now, to his point, he made an exceptionally good point in terms of prioritizing monies that is being extracted from the mechanisms that currently exist and enhancing those mechanisms in order to get more. Now, he said something about the financial service industry, and Sterling, you can concur with me when I say this. I have proposed many occasions on this platform and many others saying that there should have been a percentage of the already service fees that is being charged by the institutions here who manage the financial services industry that goes into a direct sovereignty to the government that takes care of our people, which we don't have that now. So the financial service industry only pay the regulatory fees in terms of relicenses, work permits, and those things. That's all we get from the financial service industry. Now, if we impose a sovereignty percentage from the already 25% that is being charged for the trillions of dollars that is being managed on our shores every year, we can put that into a government sovereignty that looks after the welfare of our people. But back to the land thing now, and this is where I have a pet peeve, and this is where I have a problem, because everybody wants to see a young Caymanian in a home. Every one of us want to see that in a home in which they can afford and maintain. But we must be very vigilant and consistent on how we plan on accomplishing that without any repercussions, because it's okay if we put legislation in place. Even if we were to buy land and give Caymanians, and they were to go and get a mortgage from a financial institution to build a house on it, but then the cost of living and all the other mechanisms that are surrounding them from being able to sustain that mortgage will let them fall subjected to being foreclosed on because they just can't afford to get a good job. Listen, there are a lot of things we need to fix in this country before we start putting our people in positions of responsibilities that will then further disenfranchise them by taking their homes. Like, for instance, we need to make sure that no other person in this country can sell real estate unless you're Caymanian. We need to make sure that there's job security, because we don't need job creation, you know. We got 30,000 work permits, so we know there's enough jobs. We need to put laws and legislation in place to ensure that the contribution made by Caymanians is in a way in which they can earn a salary that can pay the bills in which is piling up on them. And we need a government to focus on the cost of living. Now, I'm not saying that the stamp duty shouldn't be a little higher, and I'm just saying for those who buy a certain amount of buy a condo or a home at a certain amount, very similar to what we do with cars, Sterling. If you buy a car over 40,000, over 35 or a certain amount, it's 40%. You follow what I'm saying?
A progressive tax based on the amount, higher the amount, higher the tax. Okay.
So that might be something we can look at, and then that money could be allocated towards, NAU, sovereignty, feeding our children, or even a land-based buying, purchasing land and hedging land and subdividing, making sure it's available for Caymanian people. But listen, we have to be realistic. We can't assume that we can just tax every millionaire and not realizing the only reason why they're coming here to buy is a couple of reasons. We're safe, we're a beautiful environment, and we're tax free. So I'll just leave you all with that, Kayla. You're doing a lovely job. I'm so happy to hear you're doing an independent job. I support you. You are an awesome reporter, and I wish you the best in your success in everything that you do.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Thanks very much. And so one of the things that we want to ask about, as you touched on your article, is the idea of being able to acquire residency of sorts across different jurisdictions and here for an economic injection. But we do have one quick break to take and then another call, Ms. Kayla. So we'll enjoy our coffee while we listen to the commercials. Stay tuned.
Busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045 and pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointments.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
You can now book and pay online for your certified lateral flow test at www.hsa.ky/appointment. It's fast, easy, and convenient. Certified LFTs are $25 per test per person. HSA's testing center is located at 131 Center, McClendon Drive, behind Foster's Airport. Walk-ins for certified LFTs are also available. Need a PCR test for travel? These are now only $75. Visit hsa.ky/appointment for more information.
Now open on the sister island, Brack Medical Supplies. Located at 403 Gerard Smith Avenue, next to the Alexander Hotel. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Telephone number 948-2228. Brack Medical Supplies.
But I do have some questions.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And our guest today is independent journalist Miss Kayla Young. She's done an investigative series, first one entitled, Cayman Gone, looking at, I guess, the substantive question, for whom are you developing, who are you developing for? But Miss Kayla, this probably strikes a resonating chord with a number of us when it comes to looking at it, from the investor to the individual who's hoping one day to be able to afford some property here.
Yeah. I think the last caller brought up a good point about, even if we get young Caymanians into home ownership, it doesn't mean that necessarily they'll be able to afford to maintain that home, right? It's not an easy solution just to get people into home ownership. It's a larger issue of, okay, are the wages sustainable? Are the jobs sustainable to keep people in those homes? And I mean, that's something that I bring up in this investigation is, for example, we look at one of the economic relief measures during this pandemic was the pension withdrawals. And, that was an important safety net for a lot of people, but it also allowed certain people to pad a down payment for a home purchase. And I think that this crisis has lasted much longer than any of us anticipated at that point in time when the pension funds were made available. So a lot of people, and this is something that Jeanette Totten from ERA brings up in the story, that a lot of those people who use those pension funds to put down on a home are now struggling because the economy hasn't fully rebounded. You're a tourism worker, you're still not probably back at work. And so, taking that step forward, I'm sure felt incredible for people at the time, but a lot of those people are facing the question now of how do I continue to keep up with payments, and that's painful.
Yeah, and these are the things that perhaps may only get worse, as time goes on. But let's take this other caller. Welcome, good afternoon. Thank you for calling.
Good afternoon, Mr. Moderator. How are you doing today?
Blessed and thankful. How about you?
I'm doing very well. My name is Quincy Brown. Let me say good afternoon to your specially invited guest via phone link, Kayla Young.
Hello,
how are you, Kayla?
Good. How are you?
I'm as fine as sifted flour. The last time I saw you was at Sunset House. That was just before the election. That's the last time we saw each other.
It's been a while.
I want to commend you on your piece, Cayman Gone, one that has sparked a lot of talk in our community. You'll have persons who will read it and agree, those who will disagree, and some will read it and wonder where you're going with it. But I can appreciate it because it's a question that has been asked for a very long time. I think the timing of it is very relevant. And if I'm to answer it, who are we developing for? We are developing for anyone and everyone who wants to call the Cayman Islands home, whether you're from the upper echelons of society, because we've always attracted the wealthy, the rich, and the famous. We've always had that sort of, what should I say, mantra or goal or ambition to always get the wealth here, the Republicans, the oil-rich families from Brunei and Saudi Arabia, etc., etc. But however, we also, not only are we going to attract white collar, we need blue collars as well. We need helpers, we need nannies, we need gardeners. So we are developing for the new Caymanian, persons like myself, who I consider myself an indigenous, this will offend people, indigenous Caymanian, native Caymanian, because people say, well, there's no such thing, because we've all come from somewhere. But it no longer, Cayman no weaves no more, as them Georgetown say, it now weaves no more. Now, you have a choice. Read, follow, or get out of the way. And CNN Ted Turner, who's no longer the CEO of CNN, I think he might be dead, he once said that. We lead, we follow, or we get out of the way. So revitalization of Georgetown, great idea. Who's it going to benefit? As Camana Bay is the new city, is the new town. We are developing to become the number one destination in the Caribbean. We've got to get our act together, though, because other destinations are opening for tourism. But let me say this, though. Journalism, Kayla, and you are a journalist. You're more independent. It's not an easy job, because that's why it breaks from it. I want to thank Radio Cayman, Karamak, and so many who have guided me, ICCI, and trained me in journalism. I'm currently not in broadcast journalism or print journalism, but it's very difficult when you have up-and-coming wannabe overnight persons who think they're journalists. For instance, people doing talk shows, whether it's Sandy Hill on Cayman Mall Road or Mario Rankin on Word of Mouth, they're not journalists, they're talk show hosts, they're entertainers disseminating information. Having said that, I think Sandy Hill has improved. I miss the days of Walter Cronkite, the days of Barbara Walter, because what Don Lemon and Perry Como and CNN, what they're doing now, they get on there as anchors and they're just giving their opinions. That's not effective news journalism. And if you're a newspaper writer, if you want to write a personal piece or an opinion piece, that's completely different than reporting the news. We must be objective. We must give both sides of the story. Today, media houses are encouraged to slant a story. And guess what? Okay, the piper gets to decide what goes on. I mean, big conglomerates control media houses. So I think, Kayla, we need more investigative journalism and more crime reporting. Now, the reason why I do not volunteer information to the police is, as journalists, we have a love-hate relationship with police officers in every country. We love the police, but we don't like them. We need to work with them. Now, I'm a bit offended because I once applied for a position of media liaison, a job that I know I could do, and got no response. I was just sort of shoved aside. So I do my best to sort of stay out of the light of police officers. They're not my favorite people, but I show them respect. Now, having said that, I want to paint a hypothetical situation. If I'm to be an investigative journalist, or you are to be, Kayla, how can we report and this is just an example, how can we report on the illegal activity known as gambling or selling numbers when you and I are buying numbers every other day, for example? We would be hypocrites. How could I, if I'm to write a story on illegal prostitution in the Cayman Islands, for example, how can I write a story or report on such a story objectively if I'm a part of the clientele who are seeing prostitutes that we fly in from Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, and Honduras? So there's a level we have to keep. Mike Martin said it best, former manager of Cayman 27 CIT, and Mike Martin, he said, as a journalist, we have to keep our noses clean. Journalism is very important. And the thing is, a lot of Caymanians are not choosing to go into journalism these days for various reasons. The same reasons many Caymanians are not choosing to become teachers. They do it for a while and then they come out.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'll close because you need to obviously respond. I'm this long.
No one. Krista, thank you.
I mean, it's a hard path, and it can be hard to create those degrees of separation, like you say, from the social ills and the problems in a community that's as small as Cayman. And in terms of, okay, we have a lot of talk show types of personalities, and I think social media has encouraged that format, and a lot of news companies have realized that it's cheaper to produce a talk show than it is to invest in investigations, right? And of course, talk and discussion is an important part of society. It's important to provide these platforms like this for people to express their concerns, but we also need to make that investment into better journalism. Right. And
is that part of the challenge, Domi? We're quick to point fingers at, for instance, the politician or even the business person relative to conflict of interest. In law, we talk about as a fundamental tenet, no man should be a judge in his own cause. But if in the Cayman context, as I'm sure it is in everywhere, if the media outlet is heavily leveraged by the advertising dollar, and the particular entity, whether it's financial services, retail, what have you, has done something or has been alleged to have done something, to what extent will they risk reporting on that and lose that advertising dollar?
Yeah, and I think that's one reason why I was able to do this investigation is because CPI, this nonprofit based in Puerto Rico, they have degrees of separation from Cayman. They don't have the hang-ups that you find with local publications or the fear of upsetting an advertiser because they're not dependent on local advertisers. And I mean, that's certainly something I've encountered in my time as a journalist in Cayman, is that these conflicts come up and they do influence what makes it into the news.
And you know how it's reported, if it does make it into the news. But let me ask, though, even in today, just as a person who perhaps enjoys, reading and see, globally speaking, we're seeing where allegedly big media, as we term big pharma, maybe has been accused of not reporting as objectively on much, and then anybody else, whether it's independent, we've ascribed what they're not the mainstream media, they're the fringe media, just like physicians and lawyers and politicians have now said, the minute your perspective is something that is not singing from the same hymnal, goes from the accepted public mantra, are you now conspiracy theorists? Are you now fringe? So where's that objectivity? Where's that independence of thought? Where's that critical analysis?
And that's difficult. I mean, in Cayman, I think we have some unique media challenges. We even look at bigger markets, and we see this concentration more and more of media ownership, buying up of papers that now fall under the same corporate umbrella. Less and less locally based journalism. And, when we see this concentration of power in media, whether that power structure be the ownership structure or that be through the advertising dollars, that has real consequences. It diminishes the ability of the press to be that pillar that, the fourth estate, and to really fulfill that democratic need that the media fulfills. And we see media compromised in a number of ways. It can be pressure coming from ownership, pressure coming from advertisers, your personal fear as a reporter of what the consequences will be.
Right.
There are a number of factors that debilitate media in its purpose, and I think it's important to remind ourselves, for those of us who work in media and work in journalism, who am I here for? What is the purpose of my work? And to kind of check yourself, check your ethics and your morals periodically, and remember, I'm doing this for my community. My community is who I respond to. I may not always agree with the people in my community, but I'm here to report for them. I'm not here to report for the advertiser.
There's no hidden agenda.
Yeah, and that can be very difficult to stick to those ethics.
Right. When we come back from the break, there are a couple of things in particular I would like, if it's okay with you, reference in your article. You reference a term, I think it was about informal housing. I like how that euphemism that you may have ascribed to that. But before we do, could we also talk about this notion of people spending a certain amount of money in order to get residence, maybe another term for it, and then their income, and then that gives them a right to sort of reside here and somewhat. Could we maybe speak to those two issues at some point?
Okay, perfect.
All right. Going to pause and take that break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza, open Monday to Friday 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
A couple means two. Whether it's your spouse, significant other, or bestie, couples who sweat together stay together. King Sports Center is offering a gym and bowling special this Valentine period. Get 2 annual Powerhouse Gym memberships for $750 starting from February 6th and ending on the 14th. Receive a free self-defense class for 2 upon purchase. At Kingpin Bowling, couples can get 2 games and 2 glasses of wine for only $40. The bowling offer is from February 11th to the 13th only. For more info, call us at 946-5464. That's 946-5464. King's Sports Center, your second home for fitness and recreation, celebrating 20 years of service.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. On the studio, we have a chance to always leverage the technology we have, and we have Ms. Kayla Young join us remotely. And as we continue our discussion, I just wanted to add, earlier caller, the gentleman was talking about, the individuals being able to afford property purchases of, 29 million or 8 million and the like. And he wanted us to ensure that, his salient point was that he recognizes that stamp duty is paid, but the issue that, he's emphasizing that it should be that only Caymanians that should pay this one-time stamp duty, if any stamp duty is paid at all. But the people that can afford these, multi-million-dollar properties, perhaps should pay a stamp duty and also some sort of land tax that could go towards housing and maybe even add education, infrastructure, and the like. So I think he was clear, but just in case we didn't get that, I appreciate that. But Ms. Kayla, from that perspective, though, the idea of people, like many jurisdictions in the Caribbean and other places, have offered citizenship or residence or some sort of right to, live there, sometimes to work even, but just to live for an investment of sorts. Cayman has something similar. What is your understanding of that? I mean, what is the amount that a person needs to invest or a salary that they need to demonstrate that they earn?
In order to establish that wealth-based residency, you mean?
Yes.
So it depends on whether or not you're establishing in Grand Cayman or in one of the sister islands. The level is a little lower if you're seeking to establish in the BRAC or in Little Cayman, but in Grand Cayman, that investment is 1.2 million. Half of that should be in real estate, and then you need to have a certain deposit that is held by, I believe, the monetary authority, around $400,000. My numbers aren't exact here. I'm kind of just recalling off the top of my head. And I guess what's interesting about this is that we've seen an increase in wealth-based residency in Cayman. I think that's in part a result of the pandemic. There are people who would like to check out of wherever they've been living and find somewhere, beautiful, warm like Cayman, where life is comparatively more relaxed.
Safer. Right.
Yeah, but I think this also speaks to that, Cayman's economic model is structured around attracting these kinds of investments, and it long has been. That, government revenue, stamp duty is an important part of government revenue.
Well,
and,
Well, we have a message that we want to pass along to you. It says, "Bravo, Kayla. Thank you for your hard and diligent work on some excellent journalism." And I think that's been echoed by many of our listeners, right? But I asked that question earlier. Given that there are a number of people following what you have shared in your article, I've reached out to some have unsolicited reached out to me, and they were shocked. One, that we actually have this sort of thing in play. They heard about it, but it wasn't quite sure to the extent. And two, I wish I could say it verbatim like how it was given to me, but let's say that they were shocked and surprised that the amount was so small. 1.2 million, $500,000 less in land, salaries of 10,000. I mean, little things.
Yeah.
And anyway.
Yeah, and that buys you residency for 25 years. So it's, I guess, when you look over the long term, how long you get the right to residency, it isn't that much when you break it down year by year. But you've got to have the capital to put down, which most do not. So this, of course, attracts a certain type of individual, and something I find interesting. Of course, now Cayman is trying to, it has the digital nomad option as well. Which is, a bit different. It doesn't have that investment requirement, just, the ability to prove that you make a certain income. But this has come up from different callers, that question of stamp duty, property tax. And of course, what attracts a lot of people to Cayman is that low taxation structure that Cayman has.
Mm-hmm.
But something I have heard, and I don't know what the solution is, but one question that came up is, if we have a significant number of empty condominiums that have been sold to foreigners here, what about the possibility of having a tax for having a vacant property?
Mm-hmm.
Because that property has been taken out of the housing market effectively. And, I guess I ask myself, is that contributing to our housing stress, this ability to just, you have that initial stamp duty, and then from there, you have the ability to sit on it and leave it vacant if you want.
And something in this discussion about the amount that surprised people was the allegation that some seem to at least have the perception that maybe realtors and others are benefiting greatly from it, not just from the stamp duty, but to navigate in the process, and they're getting their clientele residency for a fee, as it were, in addition to whatever it is that the government is requiring.
Yeah, something that surprised me in working on this investigation is how many different realtors I heard, even in passing, mention this, what they refer to as the sight unseen crowd. People who buy property in Cayman that have never seen the property and have maybe never been to Cayman. And so these investments aren't coming from people who necessarily are looking to establish a presence and integrate themselves into the community. And what effect does that have on our society here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We also see something I bring up later in the article is one company that I was able to identify, Oasis Land Development. They have sold a significant number of properties in their property notes. It indicates that the prices were negotiated in Chinese currency. I found that, to be very curious. So are these individuals that are looking to just invest wherever will take their money that have no interest in Cayman? And if there is no interest in Cayman, then there comes the issue of, well, then what is their interest in implementing best practices in terms of land management and, protecting the beauty of Cayman?
And at the end of the day, what is the consequence of that? It's kind of, as a lot of the callers have alluded to, not only are we looking at who's purchasing and their intent, objectives, motivations with that, but also those who are selling. Someone who's familiar with an area, whose heart is in the area, maybe a little bit more discerning, a little bit more better position to guide that purchase, as opposed to someone who says, I'm making a buck, and the more I make, the better.
Yeah, and we know Cayman. I don't want to label all anyone who buys a multi-million-dollar property as problematic. Certainly, there are people who invest in real estate here who love Cayman, who care about Cayman. But I think we need to have this kind of serious evaluation of, okay, just because someone has the money to put down, is that the right investment for our community? Are we attracting the best investors who will really help this island prosper in the long term?
And if the idea, as was shared with me, the idea is that we want to attract a certain clientele, is it 1 million that we should be asking as a minimum investment? Is it 10 million?
Yeah.
Is it 100 million?
I think we could probably increase it, right? Especially given the benefits that come with that investment.
Yeah. Well, maybe we're devaluing much, and maybe we're allowing ourselves to be devalued. We do have the news break, Ms. Kayla, and I'm told this, not going to be too long. We'll be right back to you, all right?
Thank you.
All right, stay tuned.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. Effective today, Tuesday, February 1st, hours of operation for PCR testing walk-in clinics at Ed Bush Sports Complex and Boddentown Civic Center will be held from 1 to 3 p.m. daily for exit isolation and confirmation lateral flow PCR testing. Daily drive-through testing for exit isolation and confirmation lateral flow PCR testing will also be available at the Truman Bodden Sports Complex parking lot from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. In international news, Israeli laws, policies, and practices against Palestinians in Israel and the occupied territories amount to apartheid, Amnesty International says. A new report alleges that the Israeli state maintains an institutionalized regime of oppression and domination of the Palestinian population for the benefit of Jewish Israelis. Apartheid is considered a crime against humanity under international law. Israel says it absolutely rejects all the false allegations in the report. All federal prisons in the U.S. have been placed on lockdown after a gang fight left 2 inmates dead at a facility in Texas. 2 other prisoners were seriously hurt in the violence at the high-security Beaumont facility on Monday, the Federal Bureau of Prisons said. It is rare for such a measure to apply to the entire federal prison system. Tom Brady, one of the greatest players in the history of the NFL, has confirmed his retirement at age 44. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback won 7 Super Bowls in a career spanning 22 seasons. Brady won 6 titles with the New England Patriots before his final triumph with the Buccaneers last year. The 5-time Super Bowl most valuable player is retiring after deciding he could no longer make the, quote, competitive commitment to continue. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, welcome back, and thank you so much, and thanks too to Ms. Kaylee Young, independent journalist, for giving us so graciously of our time. And you're always not just the consummate professional, but so amenable, so hospitable. So thank you for allowing us to take a few minutes of your time. We have one sort of comment from a listener that talks about due diligence and asking, how do we know that these foreign investors are not criminals? I mean, I wonder to what extent are we looking at that?
I think that's a whole other topic of investigation. Of course, there are individuals that I certainly wonder about, and there are certainly questions around that. And I'm not sure what due diligence is being done there. I think that real estate sales fall and I'm not an expert on this part, but they fall under a different regulatory regime than, say, financial services. I mean, for example, something that stood out to me was this comment about insider trading when it comes to real estate, that there are individuals who are trading properties among themselves that never even make it to the open market. That, to me, in itself, is a concern, in my opinion. When we think about, okay, what are the consequences of that, opening this market for people to freely trade and profit that maybe don't even live in Cayman or have an established presence here. I think that's something else to wonder and look into.
Well, certainly appreciate it. And as you shared that, someone just weighed in to talk similar to what you're speaking about, where allegedly properties are not only traded internally, but sometimes they're sold and resold and never the stamp duty as required by law on each transaction or subsequent assignment. I know you've had an extended time. We do have a caller rejoin us. Would you just want to maybe. Yeah. Okay, let's take.
This last caller.
All right. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back.
Yes, I'm back then. About there is important, right? Important, right? Like I said earlier on, we come to the press, the media. It's very important. Very, 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 very important. The guideline, the party line, you understand? Borderline and the message, whatever. And because I mean, no, you want me around though. Thank God, my day off today. Thank God. When you start something, today, thank God. And also supposed to be no different there. You're gonna be there in the press like early on. The messenger, get it right. They have a job in. You know they make millions in CNN. Not CNN is Democrats in Hollywood, right? And Fox News is Republicans. That are you say news. And CATN, right? CATN, come on. You can let it one. There you go. CATN. I'll pay it out, you know. But listen, the media press, and the fundamental intellectual, right? Who are literate, right? Who went set 5 in life, set 4 in school, I went private school, right? Who have been for yet. You can, man. Right?
Yeah, man.
Tomorrow we talk better.
Yeah, man.
And we got Kayla further. Come on, take care.
All right, man. Hey, thanks much, man. Thanks, man.
Chiwi.
Ms. Kayla, thank you again for sharing with us. And maybe as people read the article, maybe reread it, they'll understand that as you share information.
Thank you for letting me come on to discuss this. And for people who are just hearing the tail end of the discussion, again, they can find the Cayman Gone investigation on Boop Cayman. They can also find CPI. I think their URLs in Spanish, so I would say the easiest way to find them if they're on Instagram or Twitter is at CPIPR, and they'll find the articles there. But the English language and Spanish language versions are on their website. But anyone familiar with Loop Cayman can pop on their website and dig into the reporting there.
Right. Now, did you write this in Spanish? Is the original version in Spanish and then translate to English, or the other way around?
Original version in English, and their team translated it into Spanish. And that was certainly a privilege. The first time I've had an article like this published in more than one language.
Well, awesome. I mean, it speaks to as the caller just shared, the importance of us as a public respecting the institution that is the media, the professionalism, the objectivity, and not shooting the messenger because we may not necessarily like the message or its tone or timing. So
that's important to remember. Yes, please. I am just the messenger.
There you go. Well, thank you, and I'll look forward to maybe future discussions, future installations. Hopefully, encourage others to consider the media and journalism as a profession. All right.
Yes, thank you so much for the discussion today.
All right. Have a wonderful afternoon, and talk to you very soon.
You too. Take care.
All right. That was independent journalist Ms. Kayla Young, and as she shared, it's like when we have discussions with educators or people in the healthcare sector, that we ask, consider using your intellect, your interests, your calling, your ambition to consider these areas in like the media and journalism. Maybe you feel that calling. Maybe it's to write and have something in print. Maybe it's because you're good at videography and the like. And so you tell your message in that fashion. But as all the callers have sort of referenced, the need for objectivity, independence, integrity, and honesty in our sort of our careers is paramount. And when something is printed that we can look at, and at the very least, which is significant, to be able to say that it's free, fair, and balanced, whether we like it, agree with it, whether it strikes a nerve, whether it points a finger, once it's objective, impartial, and certainly accurate, then that may help us to improve. Well, we have a few minutes of today's program left, and let's either continue in that vein or we may want to point our thoughts in another direction. The idea of access, whether to the beach, whether it's to a path that we thought we always could traverse, and now it's impeded, sometimes consciously and deliberately, sometimes just because of construction or overgrown vegetation. maybe it's important. Whether it's the notion that some have shared that their applications sometimes before the planning authority to now take and gate off a particular area. It may be a residential area. It may be a new thing. But without information and sufficient discussion, things may transpire to our detriment. Let's take this call. Hey, welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sterling Dwayne. How are you?
Very blessed. Very thankful, man. And I pray the same for you.
Yes, it is. I listened intently to Kayla Young a while ago, and to be honest, I am very proud of her. Here it is. She is, you would say, investigating what Cayman was and what it is. And for her to come out as a journalist and make these observations, you would say public, is like she's shooting herself in the foot and the mouth at the same time, because it can either go bitter or sweet.
But she did share that one of the...
I know she said that. And that is what, I say I'm very proud of her, because she is standing up.
Right.
She is letting known what is what.
Right.
She came here and became one of us.
But the interesting thing, as I listen to you, and it may be that some of us are unaware, or we don't consciously try to navigate certain things, right? Or let's take pieces in the media, for instance, whether we look at it exclusively to what is printed in or about Cayman, or whether it's in the place that we are then living and working. We read it, we hear it, we see it. What are we taking from it, and how do we feel about it? Is it objective? So to your point, we read, say, Kayla's piece is this piece, and then if you take your mind back to an article by, say, Simon Winchester way back when, we ask ourselves, how much of what is written in Cayman or about Cayman is impartial and objective and accurate and meant to inform, or how much is meant to malign? We're going to go back to Samuel Winchester's piece, and the Trade Wind song about it thereafter. Go back to some of the people who write now in Cayman. Are they just making a fuss, or are they actually trying to draw attention to something that needs to be properly and thoroughly addressed?
Yeah, and too many times during the media is shut up. They're silenced. If you don't do it this way, then you look for another job.
Right. But
and that can be kind of difficult within a community the size of ours.
But could that also be, and your point is valid, but could it also be that the people who are in the media, just generally speaking, whether here, there, everywhere, I call an earlier reference to it. Turn on the television, for instance, and you see the talking heads. I mean, how many of them are really using what is between their ears? Or are they just reading from a script and have no clue what they're saying? What about in Cayman? I say this very carefully because I love to cook, and I love to eat even more. But I will never call myself a chef. Now, I might say, boy, I'm an aspiring cook. Well,
why not?
Honestly, because for me, a chef is a trained professional, whether through examination, experience, and expertise, and on the job learning. I learn, I experiment, I enjoy taking the recipes and recreating them and try to formulate my own.
And I guarantee you, Sterling Dwayne, that you do better than a lot of those.
I would tell you that I have had one or two compliments. Certainly will eat what I make, but I will never say I'm Chef Emerald Lagasse or as good as any. I'm not a chef. Right.
The thing is, you're not in the kitchen 24/7.
Sometimes it feels that way, though.
That's why you're not calling yourself a chef.
Exactly.
But it's like me. I'm not in the kitchen all the time. I love to cook, and I can muster up a good meal.
Yeah.
I will say that.
I can muster up a good appetite.
And while I wouldn't call myself a chef either, I can say I can hold up with a few of them.
But is that
I might be as fast because
right?
I don't do it, here.
But is that one of the challenges though that globally we are lowering the standards of certain things, right? It is interesting when I look at discussions relative to political systems, socialism and say capitalism, right? And recognizing that sometimes we are misguided by even what we hear or even what we're trying to say. And to take, for instance, if you're asking that doctor, that lawyer, or that educator to be the very best, right? Are you providing the resources, the training, and the support, the continued education? Or are you prepared to just to take anybody, like we do allegedly in those who want to volunteer? We need 2 extra hands. Okay, you can come. You look like you can breathe. You walk in. You can do. But are we paying attention to that person and the impact that person may be having on the organization that's asking for the volunteers?
Yeah, and that is true. When you look at it also, would you take a bush cutter and put him in a dentist's office to pull teeth? The two just don't work.
Yeah. Well,
and on the note there, it took Miss Young to go on her own as an independent person to publish something like this.
But take, for instance, right? Take the recent sort of declaration, as it were. Right? There's a better word, but I just use that one. Revelation that there is an Auditor General's report that somehow speaks to the last administration's expenditure that now impacts the government relative to ongoing commitments over the next few years to millions of dollars, right?
I've seen that.
Yeah, some of us may have heard about it long ago, and some of us were waiting for it to sort of hit the media. But let's ask the question. Long ago, we were told that there was a practice within government of, I think they were called contingency warrants. And allegedly, this was used by the government the day near an election to ensure certain expenditures were either met or that they were able to incur. Supposedly, that practice was done away with, in particular on the new management laws and the like. Now, if this Auditor General's report is to be believed and is as accurately and professionally done as we expect, right, and always seen, then is that practice that has occurred very much similar to what was way back when? And if so, what is the consequence? But more importantly, how many of us are willing to talk about it publicly? And those that do, will they be championed or will they be victimized and vilified?
Not only talk about it, how many will act on it?
Right, but
because Sterling Dwayne, it said in the report that I read that it was a breach of the Constitution.
Right.
The Constitution is the highest law in the land.
Well, breaks are the 2 laws allegedly, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what will be done on it, and is it just going to be lip sync?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Well, this is it, man. This is it. But thank you very much for that thought. All right.
Thank you for your time.
All right. We'll pause and we'll take a short break and invite your callers. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Subway makes it easy for you to stay on top of your health and wellness goals with our Fresh Fit menu options. Choose from 5 Fresh Fit Subway sandwiches with only 450 calories or less per 6-inch sub. Turkey breast, veggie, oven roasted chicken, Black Forest ham, sweet onion chicken teriyaki, or make your 6-inch Fresh Fit sub into a salad or wrap prepared with fresh vegetables. For a full menu and nutritional information, visit subway.ky. Subway, eat fresh.
Busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
You know what I love to do with my family? Go fishing. I can put the bait on and cast and reel the line all by myself. My mommy and daddy say when they were little, there were plenty more fish to catch, but now there are lots more people fishing, so it's harder to find them. That's why we have marine parks now. They set some areas aside so the fish there can have babies and grow bigger. Then they swim out to other areas where I can catch them. Having the marine parks means there will still be fish there when I'm grown up and fishing with a family of my own.
For more info, download the Cayman DOE app or visit doe.ky.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us, and thanks again to all who are listening and all who've called and shared their thoughts, and to Ms. Kayla Young for being our guest. Then it's important, I think, that we are prepared to stand in the gap. We volunteer, or we are willing to mentor our co-workers and our youth, or we're willing to do that thing which needs to be done because someone has to do it. As long as we're doing it with a sense of competence, a sense of honesty and integrity, and it's important. And likewise, it's important too that we appreciate that sometimes it's the message that must be heard and not malign the messenger. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp 925-3261. Of course, you can dial 949-8037 or 949-6990 and share your thoughts with us. When we were having a discussion, WhatsApp message came through, and let's share this with you as a listener. It says, good afternoon, my people. One of the problems we have to stop is when people are able to get points for walking dogs, points for PR in our country, and so our dogs can walk themselves and are as smart as some of the ones that are walking them. I look at that in light of another comment that came through that talked about the value that is Cayman and the willingness to either have it devalued or even undervalued. It was in relation to allowing people to come and reside here. It's great. This person weighs in, as I paraphrase, to attract people who want to take up residency, who maybe want to make Cayman either their new home or a part-time home. But are we looking at people from the perspective of who they are, whether it is their financial net worth, or is it their skill sets in occupation, profession, or are we somehow not necessarily taking account of anything? It's the first through the door. This person, as I read it through during the break, is suggesting that if we're looking at the economics and their financial standing, then maybe we should be looking at those that are super wealthy. If we want to maybe have a greater skill set in a particular area, engineers, this person say, educators, or are we looking at more of the laborers? Then are we casting that net to attract those with the view? And this is what I had to reread, and I did send a message back to the individual to make sure I didn't misunderstand. This person writes and says, with a view that we're talking about, Cayman in the next 100 years, not Cayman in the next election. My comment, just for clarity, into the person, I said, well, to what extent does politics play into this? Well, maybe it doesn't, or maybe it is everything, and maybe not the politics from the perspective of the elected politics, but maybe it's the politics of society and the political economy that we find ourselves. Well, a few minutes of today's program as we invite you to call and share a thought. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp 925-3261. To your point, though, do you think that we are seriously, too late to the table, and it's now Cayman is gone? No longer the future generations, whether they're the Caymanians for whom the ancestral links were here, or it's the Caymanians for whom this is their first sort of generation, their parents came to Cayman, and now they have either come into their own as young adults. What is it? Now, the question that maybe we need to ask is that despite what has transpired, what are we going to do for our future in terms of the economic and political stability, the social harmony, the sense of bringing our society together? If we listen to some of the things that we hear our friends and family share, sometimes that we may appreciate is shared more publicly, or even the thoughts that we may have when we are, sort of alone and lost in our own minds, as it were. Are we doing things consciously that will divide our society? Are we only chasing wealth in terms of how much money that we have, the positions and the pay that we receive from the jobs and the promotions that we are seeking, to the appointments and public acknowledgements that we receive? End of the day, are we looking at Cayman, as many have deliberately and consciously sacrificed to ensure that we have a very safe and harmonious society where people move about freely and fairly, or where a person is able to be, as much as possible, that individual that is the best individual, as opposed to a space and a place where you are growing increasingly fearful of being seen, and worse, of being heard. If we self-censor and silence ourselves, then that speech may translate into a generation that is not just mindless, but voiceless as well. Certainly isn't what we want. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. I said that to very cautiously wanted to read what someone just sent in, but maybe I am doing what I just did in self-censoring, or maybe I'm being smart and delaying the reading of it. But the person's comment was in relation to my comment about the last caller. If anybody was to make public certain things that seem to bring certain behaviors or people into question, well, the person says, we have to question what will happen, and there'll be an element of victimization and intimidation. And my question is, though, is that real or perceived? And if it is one or the other, is the consequence the same? But more importantly, if it's the thing that is done to bring about these disclosures, does it matter what the objective is? Is it that people want to discredit others, or they just want to see justice done? Now, those of us who think that justice should prevail irrespective of the motivation. But perhaps I would share that if we're not, as they say, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. If we're not honest with our objectives, if we're out to malign people, even if they have done egregious acts, but our objective is to give them a taste of their own medicine, as some would say, does that make us any better? Maybe we can desire to move to a society where it is the thing that we do because it's the right, just, honest thing, and not the thing that we do because we have the might, so therefore we make it right. Well, we'll see where tomorrow takes us as we progress through today. As the gentleman who called earlier reminds us that the past shines a illuminating light on the future. It can be instructive and informative. It can at times weigh us down as well. But in the lyrics of the famous musician, if you don't know where you're coming from, then how can you know where you're going? And if you don't, look at life in such a way that you don't have a direction, and then the road will take you there. So you have to have a destination, a purpose, a deliberate plan to bring us along, not just for the journey and the enjoyment, but with the intent that we draw one another closer to find greater strength, and through that unification, of our talents, of our desires, of our hearts and our hands, we'll find a much better society. I think Cayman is great because of all the people from all walks of life who've come here. Now, can we integrate without losing ourselves? Can we meld as a people so that it becomes, a wonderful fish tea? Or are we throwing ourselves into a cauldron? Well, the question is our motivations and our actions, our intent and aspirations. Is it all for good? Well, come back tomorrow for more Talk Today right after the midday news and midday meditation. But please start out your Wednesday as you always do, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with Mr. Art for the record. A very, very illuminating discussion, instructive, informative, and one that engages, entertains, and certainly empowers. So join Mr. Art tomorrow for the record, and then have Talk Today, be your midday snack, as it were. Well, whatever song you want to hear, Susan will play it. And if you're not sure, just rock in your hammock, put your feet on your desk, and take a 5 as this music, sort of soothes your soul. This afternoon easy drive and listening with Susan, not just in the morning. All right, my friends, tomorrow I have had a wonderful privilege and pleasure to sit here for today. Work only begins for some, for others it's a reprieve. Until tomorrow, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.